So after Paulo Costa pulled out with an illness, Robert Whittaker said he wanted to stay on the April 17th card and face another contender and take the short notice replacement bout to earn his title shot against Israel Adesanya, and that new contender is Kelvin Gastelum, who answered the call immediately after Paulo Costa was announced as off the card with an illness. By the way, it was the whole Rona situation. His coach came out and confirmed it. Kelvin Gastelum stepped up as another contender to take on Robert Whittaker on short notice, and before I even get into my prediction on who I think is actually going to win this bout and what this means for the rest of the middleweight division, I want to say first of all, thank you Robert Whittaker and thank you Kelvin Gastelum. In a time right now where every fighter, it feels like, is just talking about matchups that don't make sense for them and matchups they don't want to take on and money fights they feel like they deserve, Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum has shown us once again what it means to be a real set of fighters. Robert Whittaker, no situation where he could... Robert Whittaker has every right now to sit out on the sidelines and say, right, well, I'm not fighting anyone on April 17th. I want Israel Adesanya. I've already earned my title shot. They should give me the title shot. I'm on a 2-fight win streak right now. And Masvidal just got a title shot for literally losing 5 rounds to Kamaru Usman and nothing else. That's literally what just happened right now in the welterweight division. Jorge Masvidal just got given a title shot for losing 5 rounds to Kamaru Usman and maybe arguably winning one of them. That's not a joke. So in the middleweight division right now, we've got the division of real fighters. Robert Whittaker, who might be in the candidacy for a BMF title himself down the line, is taking on another contender to get his title shot against Israel Adesanya. He doesn't want to be the guy that comes out and says, I deserve this, I deserve that. He wants it to be given to him. And if it is not given to him after this fight, if he does actually beat Kelvin Gastelum, then there is something really, really wrong with the UFC. And it will very much annoy me if Whittaker beats Kelvin Gastelum and doesn't get handed a title shot. That would really annoy me. If Kelvin Gastelum goes out there and loses to Robert Whittaker and Whittaker gets his hand raised and they still give the winner of Marvin Vettori versus Darren Till the title shot, the sport as we knew it is completely done. Welcome to boxing. Robert Whittaker taking on Kelvin Gastelum, a great bout. It's got a storyline as well. It's actually a massive bout. It's not like some normal short notice guy down the rankings steps up that we've never heard of. Kelvin Gastelum's been around, had that really close fight with Israel Adesanya. He also was scheduled to fight Robert Whittaker all the way back in UFC 234. That fight never ended up happening. Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva ended up main eventing that entire card. Then eventually Adesanya fought Kelvin Gastelum. They went to war back and forth. Eventually Robert Whittaker took on Israel Adesanya afterwards. But we never got to see Whittaker versus Gastelum, and now we finally get a chance to see the fight that was cancelled the day of the event so long ago, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think Robert Whittaker is going to win the same way I said he would before UFC 234. Robert Whittaker will win this fight by head kick TKO in the second round. I'm very confident of that. I think that Gastelum, being a shorter guy than Robert Whittaker, which he is not used to in the welterweight division whatsoever, is really going to open up those head kick combinations that he landed on Jared Cannonier in the 3rd round. He's really started to let go of those head kicks. The 1-2 head kick, I believe, is going to finish Kelvin Gastelum in the 2nd round. And I'll tell you why that's really important, that this is Kelvin Gastelum and not Paulo Costa. I believe that this helps Robert Whittaker's claim to a title shot even more than if he fought Paulo Costa. Because either way, he would have won 3 fights in a row, and he would definitely have earned his title shot again. However, in terms of building a storyline that's going to sell pay-per-views, it is better that Robert Whittaker beats Kelvin Gastelum than fought Paulo Costa if he does end up getting his hand raised. I understand that Kelvin Gastelum is a very dangerous contender. I believe that Robert Whittaker is going to win. I know that he's very dangerous, but if he does beat Kelvin Gastelum, he would have beaten a guy, if he beats him the way I think he will, by head kick KO in the 2nd round, or just finishes him in general, or just wins it by unanimous decision every single round, who knows, he will have beaten Kelvin Gastelum better than Israel Adesanya beat Kelvin Gastelum. There is no way that Robert Whittaker could have beaten Paulo Costa better than Israel Adesanya beat Paulo Costa, unless he immediately KO'd him out of nowhere, and even then that might be called a fluke, whereas Israel Adesanya literally schooled Paulo Costa start to finish because Costa stood there and did nothing. But either way, I like this narrative. I like the build up to the Adesanya fight even more now in a rematch, because if Robert Whittaker goes out there and head kick KOs Gastelum, What happened, Adesanya? You went to a close decision. What happened, Adesanya? You got rocked a whole bunch of times and were saved by Kelvin Gastelum shooting for a takedown in one of those rounds after he head kicked and rocked you. If Robert Whittaker wins impressively, he has built more of a storyline to get the Adesanya rematch, and I'm really looking forward to this bout. I'm so glad that Kelvin Gastelum stepped up the way he said he would. Really appreciative of him. Great fight to make. Whittaker loses a lot if he loses this one, but he doesn't really, because Whittaker's in a really good situation right now where he's beaten like half of the middleweight division. I mean, he's got wins over guys ranked right now. Jared Cannonier, Darren Till, Derek Brunson, even Uriah Hall once upon a time, ages ago. He's got another win over Brad Tavares, who's even still ranked in the middleweight division. If he loses this one to Kelvin Gastelum, they can't put him below Jared Cannonier. They can't put him below Darren Till, so he can only really lose 1 or 2 ranking spots. Very good fight for Robert Whittaker. I think he does win this one. Little bit rangier, little bit quicker. Gonna have a little bit more tenacity. I think Kelvin Gastelum, after his last performance against Ian Heinisch, I don't know if he's the same anymore. Don't get me wrong, Ian Heinisch is really good, but it wasn't the performance I needed to see from Kelvin Gastelum to tell me that he's now going to go on and reclaim the middleweight title, or claim it in the first place. I know he had it over his shoulder, but he was never actually the middleweight world champion. It wasn't the performance against Heinisch that I needed to see to tell me that Kelvin Gastelum is back in action. Don't get me wrong, he showed some great grappling in that bout, and maybe that's something you'll want to use against Robert Whittaker, and if he does want to use that against Robert Whittaker, well, good luck, because no one takes down Robert Whittaker in the middleweight division, or even Yoel Romero or Jacare Souza. So I feel as though Whittaker's easily going to win this one. It's going to be a nice stand-up fight for him. I think it's a great matchup. Gastelum's very patient. He's taking it on short notice, which is always better for a fighter who's had a full camp compared to a guy who's also had a full camp. He's taken a guy on who's been on short notice. I doubt Kelvin Gastelum stayed on diet. Knowing Kelvin Gastelum's past with his weight, I doubt he stayed strict on his diet after his win against Ian Heinisch. I'm very sure that he partied a little bit and enjoyed the win. He even said it on one of the interviews that I was watching of Kelvin Gastelum. He said, I really enjoyed this win because I haven't had a win in so long. I was snapping a losing streak. I really like to enjoy it and celebrate and eat some good food and drink some good alcohol. I just feel like Whittaker's got this one in the bag. Little bit faster, little bit more technical on the feet, got the head kicks to mix in as well, a little bit more variant with what he does. How does Kelvin win this one? I know he could catch Robert Whittaker out of nowhere, but even against Ian Heinisch, he wasn't catching Heinisch on the feet all too much. He was landing some good shots, don't get me wrong, but he kind of won that bout by sort of ending up on top of the grappling exchanges. And he didn't really show too many great stand-up abilities. I know he clipped Israel Adesanya a couple of times in that bout, once with a leaping right hook and the other time with a head kick. But before that, in the Israel Adesanya bout, he kind of landed a couple of jabs here and there. It wasn't really too competitive other than the moments where Kelvin Gastelum really hurt Israel Adesanya. I think Whittaker's really going to have this one in the bag. I would argue that while it lasted, I know that Gastelum went to war with Israel Adesanya, but Whittaker also did quite well against Israel Adesanya. He was landing great shots. He was actually outlanding Adesanya in certain moments of that bout. Eventually, Adesanya would catch him with a big shot because he just lunged in too many times and revealed his hand, and Israel Adesanya knew exactly what punch to throw whenever he would lunge in. But Whittaker was doing really well against Israel Adesanya, landing great shots, landed a head kick at one point as well. I think he's going to land that head kick against Kelvin Gastelum and finish him. This is exactly the same prediction that I had whenever this was first scheduled for UFC 234. This is a great fight for the middleweight division. I like it. I think Paulo Costa has really dodged a bullet here by not taking on Robert Whittaker, because I thought he would lose that one as well, and that would be maybe the end of his career and hype altogether. So now he's probably going to get a nice matchup for himself. Maybe Paulo Costa versus Jack Hermansson or something like that. A little bit more of a winnable matchup for Paulo Costa. Better for the middleweight division. Kelvin Gastelum gets a nice jump up the rankings, which arguably he's earned because he did beat Ian Heinisch and he's still a big name, and it's big narrative because of how close his fight was with Israel Adesanya. And if Kelvin Gastelum wins, I'm sure that Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum bout would still sell good pay-per-views purely based on the competitiveness of that bout. Really looking forward to this bout, man. I'm so glad that Kelvin stepped up. I'm so glad that Whittaker as well, we have to give some credit to him, took on the short notice replacement, because again, he could be the Covington, the Leon Edwards, the everyone right now in the situation among every single division who just sits there on the sidelines and starts crying about wanting a title shot. But no, he wants to wipe out his division. I think Whittaker is building one hell of a legacy at middleweight, belt or not. If you look at some of the wins that Whittaker has, I mean, adding Kelvin Gastelum to that mix, if he eventually beats Israel Adesanya down the line, maybe after this one, you're looking at a real good resume at middleweight, and he's got a lot of that outside of being the champion against guys like Darren Till and Jared Cannonier, which is a huge win in the middleweight division for him to have. I just don't see how they're going to avoid giving Whittaker a title shot if he beats Kelvin Gastelum. And I think that overall, if Whittaker does beat Kelvin, it'd be better to give Whittaker the title shot first, because as much as I love Vettori versus Till as a matchup, the winner of that one's going to be ranked number 3. I don't like that. I like the winners of these bouts that are going to get a title shot to be ranked number 1 or 2. I know I'm a little bit old school that way, but I really would like the winner of Till versus Vettori to fight one more fight afterwards, especially in the case that it's Darren Till, because he's on a 1-fight win streak if he beats Marvin Vettori, and he also lost to Robert Whittaker, so that's not going to help his case all too much whatsoever. Maybe if Kelvin Gastelum gets the upset on Robert Whittaker and Darren Till beats Marvin Vettori, they could somehow justify giving Darren Till a title shot because he technically did beat Kelvin Gastelum, so that would maybe give him a chance to get the title shot. So if I'm Darren Till, I'm fingers crossed praying that Kelvin Gastelum somehow gets the job done over Robert Whittaker on short notice. I don't see it happening. Kelvin is dangerous. I just think Whittaker's going to kick it in from range, front kicks to the body, oblique kicks to the legs. I can just see Kelvin plodding forwards and getting poked at by kicks from Whittaker and jabs from Whittaker as well, until eventually walking into a 1-2 head kick in the second round, getting finished by Robert Whittaker and building that narrative for the Adesanya rematch. But yeah, I'd like to see the winner of Till versus Vettori, in the case that Whittaker does win against Gastelum, take on maybe the winner of Jared Cannonier versus like Stephen Thompson, because as much as I love Wonderboy, and you might be concerned over the fact that I just said Jared Cannonier versus Wonderboy, you're not going to get a title shot at welterweight. They're giving it to Masvidal, even though you've beaten him. He has done nothing since losing to Usman all 5 rounds. You're not going to get a title shot at welterweight anytime soon. You're an older guy, Wonderboy. I'd like to see Wonderboy versus Jared Cannonier in the middleweight division. Winner of that one maybe can fight the winner of Vettori versus Till for a title shot, something like that. Maybe we can even do Jared Cannonier versus Jack Hermansson too. Winner of that one takes on the winner of Till versus Vettori, or even Kevin Holland, Derek Brunson winner. That's definitely what they're going to do. I was thinking for a while that if Kevin Holland beat Derek Brunson, he would jump in and take on Robert Whittaker afterwards. But now they found a replacement opponent. I'd love to see the winner of Brunson versus Holland take on the winner of Till versus Vettori. That would be perfect. And if I am going to envisage things correctly here, these are my predictions for how the future of the middleweight division will be. I think Whittaker's going to beat Kelvin Gastelum, take on Israel Adesanya, lose by decision. In my opinion, I don't think he gets finished this time. I think he'll lose by decision, be a lot more patient, but get a little bit outstruck over the 5 rounds and lose that by decision. I also can see Marvin Vettori beating Darren Till. I think that's going to happen. Then I can see Marvin Vettori beating the winner of Brunson versus Holland, who I think is going to be Kevin Holland. I think Vettori's going to beat Kevin Holland, who beats Derek Brunson. Then we're going to see Vettori take on the winner of Adesanya versus Whittaker, which will be Adesanya. And then Adesanya versus Vettori will happen. I think Adesanya will beat Vettori, but I think it will be his closest fight yet. And he'll have to prove something about his takedown defense, because Vettori is not afraid to grapple. And then we might eventually see down the line a rematch between Adesanya and Jan Blachowicz. Who knows what's going to happen, but that's my little opinion on how the future of these divisions are going to go. Great matchup to make. I'm so glad that Whittaker took on the short notice replacement. We've still got a main event. Thank you, Whittaker. Thank you, Gastelum. Click that button up there. Like and subscribe. Goodbye. I'll see you later.